The City of Corpus Christi holds its employees to high standards while treating every employee with respect, dignity, and equity. In order to provide optimum working environments and relationships, we've enacted the following policies to help employees address their complaints, problems, and grievances, and outline how to solve them appropriately. Other than licensed peace officers in performance of their official duties, City of Corpus Christi employees are prohibited from possessing a handgun or other weapons while on duty or performing services for the city. Employees with a Texas concealed handgun license are authorized under state law to store their handgun in the employee's privately owned vehicle in city parking lot. Carrying a weapon onto city property in violation of this policy will be considered an act of criminal trespass and will be grounds for immediate removal from city property, disciplinary action up to and including termination, and may result in criminal prosecution. City policy prohibits all workplace violence. Violence, threats of violence, direct or indirect, or physically threatening behavior by or against any City of Corpus Christi employee at any level will not be tolerated. This includes behaviors by citizens or others toward any employee, or any employee toward citizens or others. An employee shall not attempt to handle a violent or potentially violent incident on their own. Once aware of the violent or physically threatening behavior of anyone in the workplace, the employee should first secure their own safety, then promptly report the violent activity using the following guidelines. For imminent threats expected to cause death or serious physical harm to any worker, employees should immediately report such incidents to local law enforcement authorities, their immediate supervisor, and the Director of Human Resources. If the threat is not imminent, the employee should inform their immediate supervisor as soon as possible. If that supervisor is the alleged offender, the employee should report the incident directly to a higher level supervisor. The informed supervisor will then immediately notify the Director of Human Resources of the threat. Managers and supervisory staff should take initiative in preventing workplace violence and must not ignore, condone, or disregard any violent or physically threatening behavior exhibited or threatened by any employee. Employees are encouraged to bring their disputes or differences with other employees to the attention of their supervisors or the Human Resources Department before the situation escalates into potential violence. The city is eager to assist in the resolution of all employee disputes. The city complies with the requirements of the Drug-Free Workplace Act of 1988 and all drug testing regulations issued by the Department of Transportation. The following activities are prohibited for city employees: use, possession, manufacture, sale, or distribution of illegal drugs or drug paraphernalia as defined and prohibited by law. Any use or possession of alcohol while on duty, including lunch and breaks. Being under the influence of alcohol with a 0.04 blood alcohol concentration or greater while on duty, including lunch and breaks. Taking, using, or being under the influence of any prescribed medicine other than as prescribed. Public conduct at any time involving alcohol or illegal drugs under circumstances which may bring discredit upon the city is also prohibited. Employees must notify the department director or Director of Human Resources in writing of any arrest, conviction, probation, deferred adjudication, or pretrial diversion under any criminal drug statute at the beginning of the next work shift after such an event or finding. Employees must notify their supervisor of any prescribed or over-the-counter drug use that may impair the employee's job performance. Pharmaceutical information and a statement of use from the employee's physician must also be provided to the supervisor. Drug and/or alcohol testing occur as follows. Pre-employment. All job offers are contingent upon the selected applicant passing a drug test. Pre-assignment. Before assuming a safety-sensitive position, current employees must pass a drug test. Reasonable suspicion. If individualized reasonable suspicion exists that an employee is under the influence of alcohol or has used or possessed any illegal drug in violation of this policy, the employee is then required to submit a urine specimen for drug testing and/or breath sample for alcohol testing by the city's designated physician immediately or as soon as possible. Post-accident. Whenever a driver or operator employed by the city is involved in an accident involving a motor-driven vehicle or motor-driven equipment which involves a fatality, bodily injury that requires emergency medical care in a clinic or emergency room, or damage to property, regardless of fault, an employee is required to submit a urine specimen for drug testing and a breath sample for alcohol testing immediately after the accident or as soon as practicable. Return to duty. A city employee who returns from leave taken for any reason for longer than 30 calendar days is required to undergo a drug and alcohol test before the employee may return to work. Self-referral. Before returning to duty, an employee absent due to leave associated with self-referral is required to pass return-to-work drug and alcohol testing and a fitness for duty test by the city's designated physician, and is also subject to follow-up drug and alcohol testing without prior notice for up to 12 months from the date of return. Random testing. Employees in safety-sensitive positions are subject to random testing. State and federal laws may require additional testing based on an employee's position. For example, employees whose position requires possession of a commercial driver's license, employees in the gas department, and marina employees are subject to additional alcohol and drug testing requirements. Police, civilian, and sworn officers are subject to their own separate policy. Fraud, mismanagement, and misuse of city revenue, property, information, or other assets are prohibited. Each employee has responsibility to report knowledge or suspicion of fraudulent behavior or actions. An employee who has knowledge or reasonable suspicion of fraud, illegal activities, irregular conduct, or mismanagement should immediately notify his or her supervisor and the city manager's hotline by calling 361-826-8484 or the city auditor at 361-826-3661. The employee may also report the incident through the fraud hotline by calling 361-826-8477 or via email at fraudhotline@cctexas.com. The city does not condone and will not tolerate harassment of any of its employees on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, age, citizenship, veteran status, disability, work-related injury or illness, or genetic information. Harassment can include physical or verbal conduct, including jokes which belittle, denigrate, or intimidate based on the previously mentioned categories, or insulting remarks as well as graphic representations. Employees who experience harassment must report the violation to the department director, the director of human resources, any assistant city manager, or to the city manager for investigation. Sexual harassment of employees by supervisors, co-workers, customers, visitors, vendors, or other third parties will not be tolerated. The City of Corpus Christi specifically prohibits the following behaviors: unwelcome sexual advances defined as any invitation, no matter how blatant or subtle, which is intended to result in coerced sexual intercourse. Requests for sexual favors and all other verbal or physical conduct of a sexually offensive nature. Unwelcome sexually explicit comments such as describing a person's body, sexually explicit jokes and/or innuendos, and other sexually oriented statements which include the use of derogatory and insulting terms related to an employee of the same or opposite sex. Offensive magazines, calendars, or posters, suggestive or insulting sounds, leering, whistling, and obscene gestures. Employees who experience sexual harassment should first tell the offender to stop the offensive behavior, then report the violation to the department director, the director of human resources, any assistant city manager, or to the city manager. The city prohibits discrimination in the promotion, transfer, compensation, terms, conditions, or privileges of employment based on race, color, religion, sex, pregnancy, age, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, military status, citizenship, work-related injury or illness, disability, or genetic information. Retaliation in any form against an employee for reporting a complaint in good faith or for assisting in the investigation of such a complaint is prohibited. Employees who experience discrimination or retaliation must report the violation to the department director, the director of human resources, any assistant city manager, or to the city manager for investigation. Supervisors have an obligation to promote a harassment and retaliation-free workplace environment. Any employee who feels he or she has been harassed, discriminated, or retaliated against must immediately report the incident directly to their department director, the director of human resources, any assistant city manager, or to the city manager. No employee should assume that the city is aware of a problem. Employees must bring complaints and concerns to the attention of management so that appropriate steps can be taken. Employees must cooperate and are required to participate in any investigation when requested by the city. Following these policies and procedures will create a work environment that feels safe and comfortable for every employee, providing consistent day-to-day operations for our organization.